Thanks, Ceann Corla. Taoiseach, I think we were all a little bit disappointed last week that you weren't here to answer questions in the context of the dramatic departure of the former Minister for Justice only hours after your ringing endorsement of him. But having listened to your response to Deputy MacDonald there, the idea that you're almost taking pride in your total lack of involvement or supposed knowledge of one of the biggest crises in the history of An Garda Síochána is, to me, absolutely astounding. But we'll deal with that later on in the Gearan discussion. What I want to raise with you is an issue which affects every citizen in this state, and one, in fact, where you made your political name through your opposition of water charges. Now, you're no doubt aware that last week Irish Water issued an instruction to all of its contractors to withdraw from the installation of water meters in working class estates and to retreat, if you like, to the more affluent suburbs where they were less likely to meet resistance. A resistance which was growing and active in Cork and in Dublin and so on, and no doubt a vain hope that the electorate were going to forget about this issue. But of course, when the canvassers are gone, when the posters are taken down, and when the recycling bins have been emptied of all of the leaflets, the reality is that homeowners are going to be faced with another bill when they can't even meet the ones that they have in the first place. And not just that, but they face the obscenity of footpaths being continued to be dug up to install water meters against the backdrop of a 40% reduction and leakage of expensive treated water, when the same crews could dig up the same streets with extra people to repair the network. Now, I put it to you, Taoiseach, that this is nothing short of high-order environmental vandalism. Now, when your colleague, Minister Howlin, was Minister for the Environment in the 1990s, he brought out a document, a KPMG report, called The Financing of Local Government in Ireland. It's a good read. I have it here. It makes the point that domestic water metering was an uneconomic proposition and that water should be funded from central taxation. And so it was decided that the local authorities could keep the funds from the motor tax, a source of revenue which has increased 4 times. We've kept paying, but your government decided to pilfer that account in order to pay the national debt. And to add insult to injury, you're dressing it up as a conservation measure. So the question I'll put to you, is it not the case that water charges have nothing got to do with the funding of water services, but are in fact another toll booth on public services to pay for the national debt?
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, in relation to the first part of your question, what I am proud of are the decisions that the government has taken to introduce very major reforms in the governance of the Gardaí for the first time since the 1920s. The establishment of an independent Garda authority, which will be drawn from the broad swathe of Irish society, the extension of the whistleblowers legislation to include Gardaí, the ability of Gardaí to go directly to GSOC if they have complaints. These are very major reforms in the way in which the Gardaí are being managed, and I think that when all of this episode is over, I think that those reforms will certainly stand the test of time. The answer to the second part of your question is that the charging for water is precisely to fund the water services and to ensure that there is funding available to deal with the problem of leakages. We have about a 40% leakage from the system, to deal with the difficulties that there are in relation to boiled water notices, to deal with the danger that there is that major urban areas, including indeed Dublin, would find itself without an adequate supply of water because of the lack of investment in the water system over many years. And in introducing those charges, we have been very mindful to bring them in a way that is fair and reasonable. There will be no fixed charge. There will be no standing charge. There will be free household water allowance. There will be an additional allowance of 38,000 litres for each child. There will also be a household package available to pensioners and carers and people with disabilities, people who currently qualify for the household benefit package, which will be in the amount of €100 a year. There will be a cap on the payment for people who have medical conditions, and as a result of medical conditions will require additional the use of additional water. The charging for water will be on a metered basis, so it will be on a usage basis, which has the double advantage of encouraging conservation of water in the first instance, and secondly, enabling households to reduce their water bill. In the case of those houses which are not metered, by the time the charging system comes into effect, those households will have the opportunity of getting a rebate of the charges that they're paid if they're over the amount that they have used once the metering system has come into effect. And the charges which are concerned will be used to provide the funding that Irish Water needs to ensure that the people of this country have an adequate and safe supply of water for the years ahead. And of course, in addition to that, the government is also providing a subsidy to Irish Water in the amount of €537 million.
Could I just remind all concerned that only one topic is allowed on leaders' questions?
Well, I just want to refer to the Taoiseach's point.
No, we won't refer to two topics. You got me offside there a bit, but
no.
I'm not going to be caught the second time. It's
well,
like a good footballer.
We will take it up in the Gearan report, because I have to say the Taoiseach has some neck to talk.
No, we won't deal with that now. You can't have two bites of the cherry. You're on water now, so stick to it. Thank you.
Yeah, one rule for one and the other.
No, it's not. The same rule applies to everybody in this house.
Okay. Taoiseach, the reality is that the funding of local government previously required that motor taxation revenue would go to fund local authorities. Now, your government pilfered that account, took money out of the local authority budgets, monies that we as car owners have continued to pay in order to pay the national debt. And now you're coming looking for it again. Now, to listen to you, you would think that the local authorities never fixed a water main, never brought in any programmes to remediate or anything like that. Is it not the case that under your government, not a single kilometre of water mains has been repaired? Is it not the case that within a kilometre of this building there are massive public buildings which not one measure of rainwater harvesting or other conservation measures have been imposed? And yet the local authorities in the Greater Dublin area were working on a project, a GIS project, which involved the mapping and leakage and telemetry of our water system in the Greater Dublin area, a project which has cost the taxpayer millions, which has involved tens of thousands of staff hours and was almost at completion, which would have been brilliant to secure our understanding of our water supply. Irish Water have now axed that project. It will not go ahead because somebody in Irish Water's friend who works in Bord Gáis has a different computer system that they'd like to bring in. Taoiseach, I would put it to you that in actual fact what's being unfolded in Irish Water is going to make the HSE look like an efficient, fit-for-purpose organisation. It is nothing more than a quango lining up our water services to be privatised to Denis O'Brien, who's done you some nice favours in his ownership of independent news and media.